I found out my parents changed their will, and I'm not in it. A 29-year-old guy, and I've always had a complicated relationship with my family. There's my younger sister who's 27 and has this constant need to compete with me. And then there's my younger brother, 25, the golden child. I've always been the responsible one, the dependable son who helps out with everything while my siblings seem to coast through life. That's why what happened recently caught me completely off guard and has left me reeling. It all started with a chance encounter at a coffee shop. I was grabbing my usual morning coffee when I spotted the family lawyer, Mr. Jenkins. He's known us for years, handled all the family's legal stuff, wills, trusts, everything. It felt a bit awkward bumping into him since it was out of the blue. I went over, exchanged pleasantries, and made a joke about him working too hard. He looked surprised, almost like he wasn't expecting to see me there. Then he slipped up. He mentioned something about hoping the changes to the will weren't causing any family drama. I was like, what changes? The look on his face said it all. He realized he'd said too much and tried to backpedal, saying it wasn't his place to discuss anything and that I should talk to my parents. I didn't press him further right there, but the pit in my stomach grew. Changes to the will? Why would there be changes? And why was I not aware of them? I left the coffee shop and went straight home, feeling this uneasy sense of urgency. I couldn't stop replaying the conversation in my head. It made me think about the past few months and how strange things had been with my parents lately. My mom, especially, had been distant. She'd started ignoring my calls or making excuses about why she couldn't meet up. My dad didn't seem any different on the surface, but he's always been the type to go along with whatever my mom decides, so it was hard to tell. Then there's the issue with my siblings. My sister and I have always had a tense relationship. She has this way of undermining me, making snide comments, and generally acting like she's competing for our parents' attention. My brother, on the other hand, is practically worshipped by them. He's the one who can do no wrong and everyone seems to bend over backward to accommodate him. For years, I tried to brush it off, but it's hard not to notice the favoritism. I started thinking back to a recent family dinner we had. It was a few weeks ago, and at the time, I didn't think much of it. We were all sitting around the table, and my mom made a comment about future plans and how everything was finally settled. I remember laughing it off as just vague talk, but now it feels like a piece of the puzzle I completely missed. After the coffee shop encounter, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I decided to share what happened with my best friend, Chris. He's been my sounding board for years and I knew he'd give me some perspective. I told him about what the lawyer said and Chris was immediately suspicious. He pointed out how odd it was for Mr. Jenkins to let something like that slip and suggested I confront my parents directly. It made sense, but I was hesitant. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I also couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut. A few days later, I decided to visit my parents unannounced. I showed up at their house and the vibe was off from the moment I walked in. My mom looked startled to see me and there was this uncomfortable silence that hung in the air. When I casually brought up the topic of estate planning, she got defensive saying it wasn't something I needed to worry about. It was clear she didn't want to talk about it and my dad just sat there not meeting my eyes. I left feeling even more uneasy. Something was definitely going on. I started noticing changes in my siblings too. My sister seemed unusually confident, almost smug, like she knew something I didn't. My brother, who usually doesn't talk about money, made a joke recently about not having to worry about finances ever again. It felt like a jab, though I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't take it anymore, so I confronted my sister. I asked her directly if she knew anything about changes to the will. She just smirked and said, "Don't worry about things that don't concern you." It was infuriating and I left more confused than ever. Finally, I went to my mom again trying to get a straight answer. I asked her what was going on, why I was being left out of these decisions. She didn't look at me, just said, "We've made decisions we believe are fair," and then changed the topic. It was like hitting a brick wall. I started panicking a bit after that. I've always assumed that there would be some sort of safety net, that if anything happened, my parents would have our backs. But now, it felt like I was being pushed out, excluded from whatever plans they were making. I kept thinking about all the times I'd been there for them, driving them to appointments, helping with the house, while my siblings barely lifted a finger. I decided I needed answers, so I called Mr. Jenkins. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but finally admitted there was indeed a change to the will. I wasn't included in it. He suggested I talk to my parents for more details, but I hung up feeling like the floor had fallen out from under me. I never thought I'd be in this position, but here I am blindsided by my own family. I can't let this slide. I need to find out why they cut me out and I'm done playing nice. It's time to confront them and get the truth once and for all. Update 1. After finding out that I was cut out of the will, I knew I couldn't just sit back and take it. I called my parents and siblings and told them we needed to meet. No more vague comments. No more dodging questions. I wanted answers, and I wanted them face to face. We agreed to meet at my parents' house where all the family discussions have happened over the years. I remember walking in with my heart pounding, but I was determined. Whatever was going on, I wasn't leaving until I knew the truth. From the moment I stepped inside, the tension was thick. My mom was already in the living room, arms crossed, looking defensive. My dad was sitting quietly in his favorite armchair, staring at the floor. He wouldn't look at me, which was strange. Normally, he's the first to greet me, but this time it felt like he wanted to be anywhere but here. My sister was perched on the edge of the couch, scrolling through her phone like she couldn't care less. My brother, on the other hand, was leaning back with this smug look on his face, like he'd been waiting for this moment. He was the first to break the silence, chuckling and saying, "Well, it's about time we had this talk." That set the tone for the entire meeting. I knew then that whatever was about to happen, my brother was enjoying it. I didn't waste time. I asked them directly why I was removed from the will. I wanted a straight answer, no more evasions. My voice was steady, but I could feel the anger boiling underneath. My mom snapped back almost immediately, accusing me of being ungrateful. She said I had no right to question their decisions and that I should be thankful for everything they've done for me. It was like she was trying to turn it around, making me look like the bad guy for even asking. My dad still hadn't said a word.